Hello and welcome to Tricky Conversations Unfiltered. My name is Liz Walker, and you will notice that I don't have my amazing wing person with me here tonight, Jenny Hoey. This is where I get real and raw, and it's probably, I am so heartbroken by what's going on, and I need you to listen to this update and share it far and wide like you never have before. I promised myself I wouldn't get upset, but I'm sorry. Jenny isn't with us tonight because she is so upset. If it wasn't for Jenny joining me on the Youth Wellbeing Project team, I wouldn't be quite so clear about the messages around cyber safety. And if you've been listening to our recent updates, we've been really clear, and I'll touch on those towards the end. But I've got to tell you, Jenny's so upset by what she's seeing at the moment with kids in the practice that she works in, the psychology practice that she works in. But more than that, this legislation that I'm going to talk about tonight tipped her over the edge. If we don't stand up for our kids at what is happening right now in the world, this legislation is diabolical. The legislation I'm referring to is EU. It's out of the EU, and it's to do with end-to-end encryption. And I'm going to read to you what the eSafety Commissioner put out in the Sydney Morning Herald. Her headline is, "As Australia's eSafety Commissioner, I have never been more fearful for the protection of our children on the internet than I am right now, as governments and industry take disparate approaches to online safety. One clear and present danger I see is the European Union's application of its new European Electronic Communications Code, which will take effect later this year. In the name of privacy and data protection, this new code will effectively outlaw use of technological tools such as photo DNA, one of the key frontline weapons used by online platforms, regulators, and law enforcement the world over to detect, report, and remove child sexual abuse material from the internet. At the same time, social media giant Facebook has started talking more publicly about employing end-to-end encryption on its Messenger platform, while Google this week began testing end-to-end encryption in Android messages. The commercial move to go dark effectively absolves these tech behemoths from taking responsibility for criminal activity, including the sharing of child sexual abuse material on their platforms. After all, if they can no longer see it, it's no longer their problem. In Australia alone, from July to September, we have seen a 118% increase in reports to our cyber report hotline, most of which involved child sexual abuse material. Last year, we also ran 14,500 investigations into child sexual abuse material, the largest we've seen in the 20 years our illegal content laws have been in place. In our conversations with European colleagues of InHope, the global network for hotlines combating online child abuse, as well as with Interpol, Europol, and EU Commissioner, we know they have also detected huge amounts in these abhorrent crimes. Europe's historically fierce protection of privacy and personal data has had influence well beyond its borders. And in the case of the looming e-privacy directive, the implications for children could be utterly devastating. members of the EU are at least starting to have an open conversation about how the new code might adversely affect safety of children online, with some warning. The world is watching. I got to tell you, I'm watching this super closely, and I am super concerned because coming out of the EU, there is evil that we have never seen before. I'm going to call it as it is. This is the most evil piece of legislation we have ever seen. And when I first posted this publicly on my personal private page the other day, before I really looked into it, I'm like, one has to wonder who on earth is behind this. And I have my own suspicions around this, and potentially I'll share that in the future, because I've been digging in deep into what's happening around the globe right now, and I hope that many of you have been. But this piece of legislation, if it comes to pass, will come thick and it will come fast. And I honestly was going to title this update tonight, "The dumbest thing that you could do for Christmas is buy your kid a smartphone." I can't make it any clearer than this. The online space is changing so rapidly. And if this legislation gets into Europe, it will affect us here in Australia. It will affect the US. It will affect the world, because we will not be able to contain any measurement of child sexual exploitation material. Now, I'm going to go to a blog that was written by NCMEC, the National Centre Against Missing and Exploiting, or National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children. And they provide some details of some of the reports that they have been taking to remove child sexual abuse material. Now, remember, it's reports of this has gone up 118% in Australia. This affects Australia, but I'm giving you examples from around the world at how currently organisations like NCMEC, like eSafety Office, are able to remove content. Now, these provisions will be stripped away if this legislation gets across the line. And if you're a sensitive listener, I am sorry. I wish I didn't have to even speak these words. It's abhorrent. It's despicable. But honestly, the truth has to get out. And if we as adults can't be brave enough to face what on earth is going on online for our kids, what hope do we have? We've got to brave up to this. Okay. The global fight against these atrocities relies on a complex arsenal of human review and technology tools created in partnership with technology companies, child advocacy organisations, and law enforcement. These tools are used to surgically identify imagery depicting child sexual abuse and other forms of online exploitation, giving these children hope of rescue and protection. But these critical life-saving tools are now at risk. Without urgent action from members of the European Parliament, children will be left with no one to help them. It's up to members of the public across the world to stand together to tell global leaders not to sign away children's safety in the name of privacy. Beginning on December 21, the EU's e-privacy directive, which I called in a tweet the other day, the e-predator haven, will make it illegal for tech companies to use technology to detect online child sexual exploitation. Even though this is an unintended result of the e-privacy directive, its supporters are pushing towards the effective date with a focus on privacy concerns that shows little or no regard for the impact on children. It is NCMEC's belief that everyone is entitled to privacy. However, the sexual assault victims depicted in this illegal imagery should be given the highest priority. I am thankful that there is a but in this update from NCMEC. They say there is hope if you get involved. The European Parliament is currently debating an exception to this law, which could prevent a global catastrophe. With this interim regulation, tech companies will still be able to use these tools until 2025, when a more permanent solution can be reached. I'm going to post the update to this in the links, and I'm going to ask you to do a couple of things. Firstly, please sign the petition. I think at last count, the petition has almost 25,000 signatures. We need millions within weeks, and I mean millions. And so I'm asking you to share this live update. I'm asking you to share the petition. I'm asking you to get the word out. That's absolute priority. Share this update with anybody in Europe. Share the urgency and the ache. The ache from here to Australia to call this as the most evil legislation that could ever face our children. We've got to call this for what it is. The devastation to our children is unconscionable. Now, I understand that adults want a private space where it's encrypted, not to be followed by all manner of people who are following and tracking all manner of things and pulling down stuff. And there's never, ever have we seen more censorship than right now. And I am deeply concerned about that. And so understandably, adults want a space where they can discuss things, where they can mobilize and have ideas around things. And I'm all for that. But to bring these laws in as across the board on all platforms, when there is no consideration for child safety, that's abhorrent. Absolutely abhorrent. It is evil, and we must do something about it. Now, I've reached out to a couple of child safety orgs globally, and I know that NCOSE, the National Centre on Sexual Exploitation, put out an update leading to these petitions. But we have to do more as child safety organisations. We have to do more. So I am appealing to every eSafety person, whether you're a trusted eSafety provider with the Australian eSafety Office, or if you're an eSafety person, online safety person from around the world, whether you're a child organisation, get behind this and sign this petition and make a heck of a lot of noise. We have to do something to stop this. If you're in Europe, please write letters to your members of parliament. And if you're a parent, you need to be deeply concerned about this, because if this does eventuate at the end of December, buying your kid a smartphone and continuing to let your kid use a smartphone is potentially one of the dumbest things that you'll ever do. I'm sorry, I'm calling it. There is so much harm going on the internet right now, and we may very well become the most unpopular online safety entity in Australia. I'm okay with that, because unless we stand up for our kids and unless we give a really clear message, there is confusion among parents about whether it's okay to give your 8-year-old, your 10-year-old, your 12-year-old a smartphone. And it's just not. It's not safe. We're going to do another update in a couple of weeks about the levels of depression hitting our kids and the types of things that we're seeing. But specifically getting back to this legislation, at the moment there are not enough measures in place to protect our kids. I'm hugely appreciative of the eSafety Commissioner for putting together the safety by design principles, which essentially calls tech companies to take responsibility, these tech behemoths that think that they can make decisions for us and our children that impact our safety and theirs. We need tech companies to implement safety by design. So I'm immensely proud of the work that the eSafety office is doing. But as someone who has been in this space advocating with our governments for 4 years now, writing submissions, putting in recommendations, I've presented twice now in front of 2 parliamentary hearings. I'm among many who have been doing this hard work. None of that's paid. I'm doing it for your kids. I'm doing it because I care about your kids. Jenny, she volunteers all her time for Youth Wellbeing Project to be our parent advocate. I'm immensely appreciative of the many people who are doing everything they can. But I am so fed up, as is Jenny, yelling, and it seems like nobody is listening. This is serious. This is deeply serious. Your kids around the world have been faced into lockdowns because of this coronavirus, and many of them are coming out the other side with dysfunctional tech relationship, addicted to tech. Whether that's addicted to porn or not is another story. But many kids are suffering from intense mental health pressures because of being on devices so much. The stuff that they have to filter through their little brains, they don't have the capacity for. So I'm appealing to you. I really need you to get behind this petition. I really need you to rethink kids' screen time. If you're an online safety provider, I urge you, rethink your messages. You know, it's the stuff that kids can encounter online can literally change their trajectory. And it's up to us as parents to say, I'm not okay with that. Both Jenny and I have seen the fallout of tech on our kids, and we paid the price dearly. It's not to say that our kids can't develop resilience. It's not to say that they can't recover. But at what point are we going to say, this is damaging our kids, and get real with that message? And we celebrated the life of Colin Karchner, who probably delivered this message in a much more friendly manner than what I'm coming across tonight, and that's okay. This is about my heart for your kids. So, what can we do on a practical level? I'm going to put in the links, our Kids and Screens guidance. We have to be aware of what type of device our kids are using and whether it's internet connected or not. We have to be aware of their brain development. We have to be aware of how much they're connecting online or hiding about what they're connecting with online, and how much they're connecting with friends and families and the things that matter the most. If COVID has taught us anything, the value of connection is profound. The value of having good family relationships is so vitally important. The value of having loved ones around us is so vitally important, and we need to rethink our kids' screen time. We need to be aware of the context that our kids are using their screen time. Is it relational, educational, and inspiring, or is it normalizing or promoting harmful messages? We need to be critical of the recommendations for apps, because 13 is not some magic number where they've grown a brain and they're able to process everything that they see. It's actually the age and stage where they pull away from parents and tell you, stuff you, I don't want you in my life. And is that the age that we want to be giving them access to the world with messages that don't give a damn about them? And we need to be mindful of their capacity. The common question is, at what age is my child ready to have a smartphone or open internet access? And we put the question back on you. At what age are you ready for your kids to see some of the most horrific content known to mankind? We've got kids in schools talking about zoophilia. We've got kids in schools, hang on, back up. If you're not aware, that's sex with animals. because they know, they've seen it. We've got kids in schools talking about pedos as if it's a joke because they're not understanding the complexity of what's going on online. Daily, kids are groomed by predators. Within minutes, a kid can be groomed online. And this EU legislation, it's actually in legislation. We've got a small window of opportunity to act. If this comes to pass, how are we ever going to track any of this activity? We won't. We won't be able to. This EU legislation affects the world, and I'm not okay with it. And neither should you be. Unless we have a radical uprising of people around the world awake to what is going on right now, particularly with this piece of legislation. But by gosh, there's lots more coming if we don't wake up. We must act. We must act for the safety of our kids. I'm not okay with this. And I'll lean back into Julie Inman-Grant. She said something about, okay, go back to her initial statement. I have never been more fearful for the protection of our children on the internet than I am right now as governments and industry take disparate approaches to online safety. Do governments truly work for us? I don't know. If they did, then a lot of the recommendations that we would have been making over the years would have happened a lot more quickly. If governments truly worked for us, they would stop trying to partner with agendas that put our children at risk. The whole world is watching the EU and what happens with this. My only hope is that brave voices, leading voices like our eSafety Commissioner, Julie Inman-Grant, like NECMEC, like child protection agencies around the world, gets in the face of these parliamentarians in the EU and says, no, not on our watch. Heavy update, I know. I make no apologies, I can't. Unless we speak up now, unless we rise up now collectively across the world for the safety of our children, for their protection, we've got to save our kids. We have to. We have to. So we'll be back next week. We did take a couple of weeks break. We are on the front line of this, and often it gets really heavy and really tiring, particularly coming up to the end of the year when we're all feeling the fatigue of what has been a very challenging year for many. But I urge you, find the fight to rise up and speak up about this, to get fired up, to share it with as many people as possible, particularly those within Europe who can write a letter to their parliamentarians and try, for the sake of our kids, to put a stop to this. So I love you all. Maybe not all of you who don't like me. Oh well, I make no apologies. But parents, we are here for you. We're doing our best to get a really clear message out, and I cannot urge you enough to be aware of what's going on. Open our eyes. We have to open our eyes to what's going on, and we have to speak up now. So on that note, please share, please like, please comment. I have no idea if there's been 13 comments here. I'll just flash a couple up. Carolyn Ellen says, I'm so on board. We need to shift to a just get them off tech message now. Too much damage is being done. We need to draw the line. I absolutely agree. Carolyn Carolyn also says, I can't work out how we are moving in completely the wrong direction. I read the article earlier today and couldn't wrap my head around it. I just don't understand how this is possible. And I would have to say that it's possible because there are people in power who don't have our children's best interests in mind. So it's time to rise up, get vocal. And I'll just put this one up from my dear friend who is in Europe. You are so fierce, Liz, and you're welcome, Anya. I am fierce. I'm raging. I can't be silent any longer, and neither should you. Please, Anya, share this with all of your connections in Europe. Please get behind this and send it to everyone you know. This is diabolical if it gets through. So rise up, world. It's time. Okay. We shall see you next time. If you're concerned about children and young people's safety and well-being related to porn harms, find answers with Youth Wellbeing Project. Families searching for answers will benefit from our children's books, blogs, Facebook community, and other resources. The IQ programs provide classroom curriculum to equip educators for the task of supporting kids and teens to author their own future, instead of leaving it up to the porn industry to be their educator. Whether you need face-to-face or online professional training and student presentations, classroom curriculum or resources for families to deal with the fallout of porn, our team are here and educating for tricky conversations.